Some more disappointing polling for President Joe Biden. Voters trust former President Trump to navigate issues with Ukraine, Israel, and China more than Biden. That's according to a new Bloomberg News and Morning Consult poll. It found that more voters said they trust Trump to handle relations between the U.S. and China. 46% said they trust Trump with the issue, while 34% said they trust Biden more. 20% of respondents said they didn't trust either one of them to handle foreign policy with China.
45% of respondents said they trust Trump to handle the Russia-Ukraine war, compared to 34% who said the same of Biden. 21% said neither candidate is trustworthy to handle the war, the poll found. Slightly more voters were undecided when it came to the Israel-Hamas war. The survey found 24% of respondents said they didn't trust either Trump nor Biden to handle the unfolding conflict in the Middle East. 43% said they trust Trump to handle the war, while 33% they trust Biden with the conflict. I think these are a lot of impossible issues. I trust very few people to handle any of them, but shocking that the two main contenders for the highest office in the United States are not trusted with handling conflict in the Middle East or conflict with China. It's just honestly insane that these are our front runners. But I think it tells us a lot about what the mindset is among most American voters, and that there really is a lane there for an independent candidate.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also worth pointing out in this poll, though, that when voters were asked which was their single most important issue, only somewhere between 1 and 3% identified either relations with China or relations with Israel and Palestine as their top issue. The bigger issue for them was the economy. 41% of voters identified that as their top issue. But I will say I'm not surprised to see that Trump does perform better than Biden on these foreign policy related issues. People acknowledge that the U.S. did not get involved in any new wars while Trump was in office. At most, there were a couple of drone strikes that were done against Syria and Iran. But overall, he kept the U.S. out of escalation. And that, I think, was what most Americans were really yearning for after that 20-year conflict in Afghanistan. He was the one who started the process of negotiations between the Afghanistan government and the Taliban to hopefully pull out U.S. troops. Biden basically threw the negotiation timeline in the trash, which led to this debacle in terms of his withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the foreign policy decisions have only gotten worse from there. And I think Americans feel at this point that we could be on the cusp of World War III. It seems we're only getting more entangled in other countries' wars and other countries' conflicts. And we're sending tons of U.S. money that could be hopefully used very well here at home to other countries and their ability to defend themselves. And so it's no wonder that I think people are looking backwards at the Trump administration and saying, yeah, things were a little bit more secure when he was in office, despite all of the hand-wringing from the Democratic and Republican establishment, as well as the mainstream media, about this idea that he was the one who was going to get us into World War III.
Yeah, 3 in 5 Americans living paycheck to paycheck doesn't bode well for all of those people casting ballots whose number one issue is the economy. And I think when people consider a Joe Biden presidency, even if foreign policy is not their number one issue, they look at $4.3 billion proposed to be given to Israel. They look at the huge packages that Ukraine and Israel are asking for, and Biden pledging his vowed support for Israel and for Ukraine. They're not hopeful that this is someone that has their pocketbooks, their bills, them keeping food on the table and keeping their house as their number one. I think that leads to a lot of mistrust. It leads to them not performing well in them expressing their doubts. I think most people don't even really care too much about the outcomes of foreign conflicts. What they really care about is, will there be a security concern back at home?
Right.
And will our public dollars be going to fund these conflicts when we have a lot of economic strife here at home?
Yeah, your point about the foreign aid is really important because what you're acknowledging there is the idea that the economy and these foreign aid packages are intertwined. And you're right. People do see that when they're paying more for gas and groceries, when inflation has run rampant, when wages have been relatively stagnant, and the only job growth really from the Biden administration has been a result of returning to pre-pandemic economic conditions, they don't want to see $10 billion going off to Ukraine every 3 months when Congress negotiates another continuing resolution or another spending package. And on the economy, voters said that they trusted Trump 16 points more than they trusted Biden. So it's not even close. And even when you run down these issues of infrastructure, housing, crime, immigration, Trump outpaces Biden on all of those, which are considered important issues to voters. And I'd also point out that on this abortion issue, which has sort of been the crux around Republicans' necks on a state and local election basis, Biden only leads Trump by 4 percentage points when compared Biden only leads Trump by 4 percentage points, which is a lot slimmer of a margin than I would expect. And Trump has sort of moderated a little bit on the abortion issue. He, of course, was responsible for appointing those Supreme Court justices that ultimately overturned Roe v. Wade via the Dobbs decision. But since then has come out in opposition to a federal abortion ban and has kind of washed his hands of the issue. And as critical as pro-lifers have been to him on that, he of course deserves credit from the pro-life movement for appointing those Supreme Court justices. And if this moderation on the abortion issue is something that can get him back in office, I think they would be right to say, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good.
It's also amazing. I did field reporting in Kentucky, just spoke with a lot of everyday people out on the street there about what they felt about the state ballot initiative for abortion, either a ban or also tacked on to this same issue was whether or not the state would fund abortion, that it could come out of state-run health care. Many people voted against the bill because of the latter, but disagreed with the former, but they were lumped together. And a lot of people thought that this overturning of Roe v. Wade was something that Biden did because it happened under his presidency, and didn't even attach the reality that Donald Trump appointed the justices that made this decision to the outcome of having abortion, not being protected under federal law anymore. So it's shocking what the American mind believes. Correlation is causation in the mind of a lot of American voters. And Jerome Powell, being someone who was appointed by Donald Trump, but the economic turmoil because of his policies of constantly raising interest rates with the story that it will resolve inflation, even though it's made our economy far worse. It doesn't matter that he's a Trump appointee. He's been in office during the Biden presidency, and a lot of the impacts of higher interest rates are things that people credit to Biden. And when Biden talks about Bidenomics, he makes economics the central focus of his campaign, which is not good for his reelection when the majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck. And an alternative outcome, whether or not they say it's the explicit outcome of raising interest rates, is now everyone who can afford to loan money out. So big banks, government treasury bonds, who can afford to purchase those, now they're making that much more money in interest off of the money they loan out. Higher interest rates are a huge money grab for the wealthiest people in our country. And so what's going on under the Biden administration, regardless of whether or not he's who appointed Jerome Powell, he's going to have to answer for that. Why did he leave Jerome Powell in office? Why didn't he try to change the trajectory of how our economy was headed when he came into office? And he doesn't have good answers for any of those things because they believe that raising interest rates is all good and fine when it's directly connected to 3 in 5 Americans living monthly, paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, it's also interesting that Biden is okay with the raising of the interest rates while he's repeatedly lobbied for passing these massive spending bills that he claims will boost the economy, but really end up just causing more rampant inflation. So agreed, he has a ton to answer for in terms of the economic decline of the United States. We'll be back with more Rising after this.